along and back, which is not the same as the graph that you've been learning about. So your mind has two memories, the memory of the graph as it is, and the memory of your eye movement graph, and they contradict, so your memory will be poor. And if you use a visual guide, as follows, the memory of the shape will be right, the memory of your eye movement pattern will be correct, and you'll have two other memories as well, the memory of seeing this thing move over the page, and the memory of your muscles moving. So you have 4 positive memories instead of 1 good and 1 bad. So the visual guide is really essential. And as I mentioned, it's also essential not only in the overview on graphs, but also for regular reading. Now again, throughout this entire process, you should have been using all the information given to you from the previous programs, using the memory techniques, proper note-taking techniques, general learning, and so on. There's also another particularly important thing that should be going on throughout this, and this is selection and rejection. Now, as you're overviewing, previewing, and imbuing, we're trying to sort out that information you actually want to keep. Now, there are a number of tips for sifting out information which is in some way suspect. A number of these, for example, if the author is using emotional language, using Christian names and positive words to describe something, that information is, in a sense, suspect, as it would be if he were using negatively emotional words. He's taking you along an emotional path rather than the information. So that information is suspect. Other kinds of suspect information. If an author says, we all know that, everybody knows. Do we all know? If you look down into the pub, you find that perhaps we don't, or that we do disagree. So these kind of tips, tremendously important for actually selecting and rejecting that information you want to note, that information that you want to disregard. Once you've completed all of that, your initial study application period is over, and you then enter into your long-term learning. And there are 2 main factors here. The first one, down here after you've done your pattern, is the review graph. Now you recall that after 10 minutes, your learning recall reaches a high point. After that, you lose 80% within a day, so you must maintain it. Now the maintenance of this information can only be done by coordinating your reviews regularly with your pattern notes. So we look at the patterns, and what you have to do here is to review by using the pattern, by checking the information. Now if you imagine this as your major ongoing pattern, you find that what you do is add to it after each study period. And as I mentioned before, as this pattern expands, it begins to touch on all those other areas surrounding your information, which means that you finally become able to criticize, to integrate, to understand where you need more study. What happens then is that as you read more books, you have more information, you can ask better questions, establish your goals, know more, learn more. And in the final analysis then, all your learning, all your studying, instead of being a boring, dull, oppressive process, actually becomes really, really enjoyable.
Your head.
If you were in command of a little task force, dropping into unknown and very dangerous territory, and you lost your intelligence officer and all the plans, what would you do? after a quick cup of tea, you'd obviously send out reconnaissance scouts to find out where the hell you were. The army might train its men to cope with lost plans, but most of us don't even have plans to lose. We do all have problems, we do all have decisions to make, and we do all need to know how to use our heads. In this series, I've tried to introduce you to new ways of using your eyes, your memory, creative ability, and organizational capacity. I've tried to help you use your head. In this last program, I will be keywording, so to speak, the most important parts of each program, showing how each connects with all the others. In other words, you will be building up one continuous, ongoing pattern as I review. You will recall that we compared the number of interconnections in the telephone system with the number of interconnections in your brain. We have more interconnections in each of our brains than exist in all the telephone exchanges of the world. That's the potential, but where's the evidence? The problem is that we've never devised the proper operating manual. Think, for example, of your formal education and ask yourselves the following questions. In school, were you taught how your eyes can scan print, getting all kinds of different information from it? Were you told about the different speed your eyes can travel? Were you taught about the nature of your memory? Why it forgets things? How it records things? How it can record things better? Were you taught special study techniques which would enable you to relate, not just to your own subject, but to any subject with confidence? Were you taught the nature of problem solving? Were you taught to think creatively? Were you taught to think? I'm pretty sure the answer to nearly all those questions is no. Let's look first then at the eye and the information it scans. Reading is the way you interact with symbols, and those symbols are not always words. What that really means is that reading includes the way in which you absorb, understand, and remember the information that comes to you in books, in pictures, on television, in newspapers, in diagrams, in graphs, and so on. We can break this reading process down into a number of steps. First is the ability to recognize, to know what the symbols are. If you don't, then you can't interact with them. Most of you watching this program will know the English alphabet and English words. Even if you know the words, but don't know how to look at them properly, you'll find difficulty in reading. You can instantly improve your performance by fixing your eyes on larger groups of words. And the whole process can be speeded up